Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to our monthly Mornings with O'Keefe program. My name is Grace Almanza. I am the School and Tour Programs Manager here at the O'Keefe Museum, and I'm excited to be here this morning. I would like to begin by recognizing the lands of the Pueblo people on which the sites of the Georgia O'Keefe Museum stand. We recognize and honor their elders, past and present, and celebrate the vitality of their people today and into future generations. I offer this with humility and gratitude in acknowledgement of the need to confront the ongoing injustices of settler colonialism. I would like to extend a thank you to our members and donors who are here today. Your support made this event possible. And if you're not yet a member and enjoy this program, please consider joining today. You can visit theokeefemuseum.org/membership to learn more. So throughout this talk, please feel free to place any questions you may have in the chat. There's also a Q&A section. They can be found at the bottom or at the top of your screen, depending on your device. We'll try to answer as many as we can at the end of the conversation. Please note that following today's talk, a recording will also be made available on the O'Keefe Museum's website in about a week's time. Captions in both English and Spanish will be available as well. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter for this morning, or our presenters, both Tori Dugan and Elizabeth Ernst.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, hopefully everybody can see and hear me. Please let me know if you can't. Thank you, Grace. Good morning to all. I'm Liz Ernst, Head of Research Collections and Services at the Georgia O'Keefe Museum, where I oversee the library and archive. Today, Tori Dugan and I are going to talk about Georgia O'Keeffe's personal libraries and the museum's efforts to care for and provide access to the materials. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the museum's library, the Michael S. Engel Family Foundation Library and Archive. The Engel Library and Archive has a wealth of materials pertaining to Georgia O'Keeffe, but also more broadly, modernism. We have the usual library materials such as books, periodicals, magazines, vertical files, research databases, but also collect more unique items such as manuscript collections, the museum's historical records, institutional archives, oral histories, photographs, and library special collections, which does include O'Keeffe's personal libraries. So the library is open to the public Monday through Friday by advance appointment, and you can schedule these appointments online. At the end of the presentation, we're going to provide some links so that you can find some more information about the library, book appointments, research resources that we provide for finding more information on O'Keeffe, and related content like her properties or her circle of friends and her artistic practice. I should also mention that we often have exhibitions in the library and archive, primarily of library and archival material. You can see in this slide, this is the library and there's some display cases. This is actually our current exhibition. You can also see some of O'Keeffe's artist materials and a few works of art in the library. So those can be booked as guided tours online as well. O'Keeffe's book collection is of special significance. It reveals her interest in a wide range of topics such as art history, techniques, health, world history, travel, cooking, gardening. She purchased a number of the publications herself, while others were given to her by friends and admirers. And some were originally part of Alfred Stieglitz's collection. He was a renowned photographer and gallerist who O'Keeffe was married to from 1924 to 1946. Many of the books have ephemera, such as photographs or notes tucked inside, or inscriptions to Stieglitz and O'Keeffe from friends and colleagues, and reflects the intellectual and cultural circles that they were associated with and part of. So we treat the books that came from O'Keeffe's two properties in northern New Mexico, her house at Ghost Ranch, and then also the home and studio in Abiquiu, separately in some ways because they came to the museum at different times and from different sources. But we understand that the books were really taken back and forth by O'Keeffe between her two properties. So I'll address them both separately and together. Books that were located in O'Keeffe's Ghost Ranch property at the time of her passing came to the museum as a gift from Anna Marie and Juan Hamilton in 2000. There's about 800 items, which are all cataloged and available for research in the library. So in this slide, you see at the left and in the center, those are the books at Ghost Ranch in 1998. And then on the right, those are the special collection stacks where the Ghost Ranch books are now housed. The publications in Abiquiu are primarily housed in a small room that's about 14 by 16 feet. It's known as the book room. And in 2006, the Georgia O'Keeffe Foundation transferred the ownership of the Abiquiu property and house, which includes the book rooms and all of its contents, to the museum. Attempts to document the room started well before 2006, as O'Keeffe actually hired people to inventory and organize the books, and then later the foundation inventoried the contents. She had them mostly organized by subject. And there's about 4,000 items currently cataloged in this collection, and it's still being cataloged. Tori's going to speak a little bit more about that later on in the presentation. And you can see here in the slide on the left, the Abiquiu book room in 1979, as O'Keeffe had them organized. She had these little strings that she would put across the shelf as they were organized. And then in 2006, up at the top, this is right about when the materials came to the museum. And then a more recent photograph from 2019. And as you can see, they're pretty much in the same location and organized and arranged the same way O'Keeffe had left them more than 30 years ago. So in 2021, the museum was awarded an opportunity to complete a preservation needs assessment for the library and archive through an Intermountain West Regional Heritage Stewardship Program, which was supported by the Conservation for Art and Historic Artifacts and funding from the National Endowment of the Humanities. And the purpose of this assessment was to review the museum's preservation needs in regards to environment, temperature, relative humidity, pollution, light, housekeeping, pest control, fire protection, security, disaster preparedness, storage, handling, exhibition, treatment, and long-term preservation planning. So due to COVID-19 and the limitations on travel and on-site access, the assessment ended up actually being done remotely over a few months. We had an extensive pre-visit questionnaire, lots of visual documentation of the collection spaces, and many conference calls with the surveyor and staff from across the museum. And the assessment now serves as a basis for developing strategic preservation plans and prioritization of our collections, care, and treatment. And here you see a couple of photos. These are overviews of what the book room looks like. You can see these were actually supplied for the preservation assessment. And you can see the one window that is in the book room and the small door there. The books line all four sides of the room. So prior to the broader preservation needs assessment, we knew that there was a number of items in O'Keeffe's personal libraries that had condition concerns. And we discovered these often during cataloging or when we were responding to research or exhibition or digitization requests. Some of the items being too fragile to exhibit or handle too much, or even fully photographed so we could provide research images. So we used the preservation needs assessment to inform another funding request for a book conservator to come out to do an item level survey of the materials and prepare condition reports for the items. And in late 2021, we were awarded a grant from the National Endowment for Humanities to support the item level survey and collections examination. And then in February 2022, the book conservator Amber Harris, who you see here on this slide, from the Conservation Center of Art and Historic Artifacts, came to Santa Fe for 3 days. And she examined 127 items from the Special Collections, Georgia O'Keeffe's personal libraries. We selected items dating from 1840 to 1977 based on their condition, their storage or use concerns. Not all of the items with potential condition issues were examined, but really the survey helps to inform similar condition issues for the rest of the collection. So information gathered includes physical descriptions of the materials, condition issues, potential handling issues, a conservation priority rating, and a proposal and estimate for treatment or housing if it's appropriate. And I'm going to dive into this project a little more and share some of the findings. The collection surveyed is almost exclusively machine-made paper printed with black inks. A fair number of materials had at least one other printing ink color. About half the volumes had scattered inscriptions and other marks in various inks and graphite. Most of the items surveyed were sewn through the fold of the section. This is where the sewing thread or metal staples pass through the folded pages at their folds. And this structure really allows for the most unrestricted opening of a volume. Some examples on this slide. On the left are some materials getting queued up for examination. So the cover of the book is important because it protects the leaves from dirt and damage. And the bulk of the items that were surveyed have more traditional covers, over a quarter of them having a secondary cover, like a dust jacket. And quite a few in the collection have a slipcase or were in a portfolio or folder or a box that was providing additional protection for the item. And here are a couple examples. You can see the first item on the left is actually a spiral bound cookbook from O'Keeffe's Abiquiu Kitchen. Came off one of the shelves there, and obviously it was used pretty heavily as the cover is no longer on it, and some of the front pages have come free from the spiral binding. It was actually held together in a folder labeled in O'Keeffe's handwriting, Volkswagen. And then on the right is Reflections on the Death of a Porcupine and Other Essays by D.H. Lawrence. And this is an example of a rigid cover with beautiful marbled paper covering it. And it's also housed in a slipcase. This is part of a limited edition of 925, of which O'Keeffe had 3 copies in her collection. There's an inscription on the front loose end paper in this copy, which reads, "When dreams and realities are one, the miracle has happened. It is about 10 years ago, Anita Politzer brought me some drawings to 291, to Georgia O'Keeffe from 291, December 20th, 1925, room 303. So from Stieglitz to O'Keeffe. The general condition information about the items surveyed in the personal libraries was recorded for all 127 objects and resulted in a condition report form. So the condition report records the physical condition of the object. It makes recommendations for handling, for conservation treatments, and assigns a conservation priority level. And these are important because they can be used to inform change in an object's condition over time. And not everything actually had condition issues that was surveyed. Some areas were consistently not a problem in the collection. For example, the media or the ink or graphite to make marks on the paper, either printed text or inscriptions, were generally in really good condition across the collection. But we added some of these items to the list to be examined because they have high use. They're highly requested for research or exhibition, and we really needed to get the baseline in order to track any changes moving forward. So here you're looking at an example of an item in good condition with no conservation recommendations. It's a rare bound volume of photo secession member information, exhibition catalogs, and calendars from 1905, 1906. Stieglitz, who led the photo secession, stated that the object of the photo secession is to advance photography as applied to pictorial expression, to draw together those Americans practicing or otherwise interested in the art, and to hold from time to time at varying places exhibitions, not necessarily limited to the productions of the photo secession or to American work. And in the collection, there's actually a few bound volumes of materials related to the photo secession. Some of the more common issues noted in the survey were brittle items, surface dirt, tears, losses to pages, or fully detached parts of the books, unintentional creases and folds, as you see here, and attachments that are fastened to pages with some type of adhesive or a staple hinge that make it complicated for handling or digitization. Text block splits are another common issue in the collection, and typically there's at least 3 layers that keep a text block intact: sewing, an adhesive consolidation, and a spine lining. And the issues in our collection range from very minor to complete splits of the text block. And you can see here, again, reflections on the death of a porcupine and other essays by D.H. Lawrence. And this is an example of a text block split in the collection. Over a third of the covers have boards that are loose, detached, or missing, and almost all of the dust jackets are experiencing some sort of wear or tattered. And as you can imagine, the cover conditions are similar to what I just listed for the over book support and structure: tears, losses, brittle, dirt, grime, maybe loose detached parts. And you can see examples here. On the left is E.E. Cummings' The Enormous Room. The cover is fairly brittle and it has become detached. And then you have Cook, Write, Live Longer, the Cordell book. O'Keeffe actually had 2 of these, one at Ghost Ranch and one in Abiquiu, and both have numerous page markers, inserts, like recipes stuffed in them, inscriptions throughout them. So clearly they saw a lot of use, and this one it has some damage to its spine. As I mentioned, most of the objects had known condition issues, so we've already taken some preservation steps. For example, many of the objects have standard size enclosures, which keep the loose components together and protect them in storage. Many of them that are unique have been moved already to the library in Santa Fe, where there's more environmental controls and they can be stored in a way best to protect them, such as flat or in a full enclosure. The best housing solution is really a full enclosure that is shielding the entire item from light or dust or any environmental fluctuation. And this is recommended from the conservator for any item that is particularly important to the collection, or it's very fragile or susceptible to light damage. Specific recommendations have been made in the condition reports for each item. And then a summary report makes recommendation for housing and storage improvements more generally across the collection. Like, for example, dust jackets that are susceptible to damage can have an inert polyester film sleeve to protect them. And this is a minimal treatment that still allows the item to be viewed so that we can still see the spine and cover, and then it can be easily removed for exhibition or presentation. And we already do this for a fair amount of our general collections. So here you're looking at an example in this slide of some of the items that have been moved to the museum's library in Santa Fe, and they're being stored flat in display drawers that are typically closed and tucked away from light. And then a 4-flap enclosure, which has D.H. Lawrence copy of Sun. This is an uncut text and is number 69 of a privately printed edition of 100. It has this beautiful purple marbling on the front of it. So while not all items require conservation treatment, moderate or minor treatment is recommended for many of the items that were surveyed, and the average cost of conservation treatment per item is just over $2,000. Housing solutions for items average about 100. In order to do a more phased planning for this conservation treatment, each object is assigned a priority category. Extensive, which means it cannot be used without treatment. Moderate, which means there would be some loss likely if it's used. Minor, which is mostly cosmetic damage to the item. Housing only, which means it only needs an improvement to the materials housed within, and then conservation not needed. So you can see a breakdown on this slide of the conservation priorities and how many items from the 127 that were surveyed, where they fall. And then on the left, New Mexico guidebook, which is an example of an item that is in the extensive priority category, as it has a wide range of issues that you can see here. It's got text splits, it's stained and dirty, it's delaminated and crushed. It's seen a lot of use over the years. Overall, the survey indicated that most objects can be used safely and handled in their current condition with reasonable care, particularly if they're rarely handled or exhibited. The condition issues that would impact safe handling during research, exhibition, or digitization were recorded in their condition reports, and then are going to be reflected and are getting reflected in the catalog records so that staff and patrons are alerted to this before use. Additional notes, handling notes, conservation proposals, and estimates are going to help us prioritize for the future care of this collection. And next steps for us include a continued digitization and visual documentation of the items, the materials themselves, as well as the book room as a whole. We are planning for a conservation treatment project and finishing the cataloging of the book room items. And here you can see the Forerunner, which is a great example of why we needed to have the item level survey and condition reports. It contains inscriptions and marks by O'Keeffe. She wrote her friend Anita Politzer about it, and the book has been consulted quite a few times. It's by researchers, it's been written about, it's been exhibited. In fact, it's on exhibit right now. You can see in this slide as part of our current exhibition in the library and archive. It has been subject for photography. It was recently photographed as part of our effort to photograph the library and archive collections with the new Hasselblad camera system, which was part of a IMLS, or Institute of Museum and Library Services grant. And those result in a high resolution file, which then we're able to share online through the collections online. So now I'm going to hand it over to Tori, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the cataloging of the unique materials in the collection, like the Forerunner, and where you can find more information about them and see them yourself.
Thanks, Liz. Let me get my screen up here. Okay, as Liz said, my name is Tori Dugan, and I am the Cataloger and Library Services Specialist here at the O'Keeffe Museum. And as the cataloger, it is my responsibility to catalog the library's collections, including O'Keeffe's personal libraries. Cataloging is an important part of collection management and collection stewardship, as it really enables us to maintain a current and accurate accounting of the items in our collections. I'm going to talk about the cataloging practices here at the O'Keeffe, but first I'd like to take a moment and define what I mean when I talk about cataloging, catalog record, and catalog. So what exactly is cataloging? In its simplest terms, cataloging is recording data to represent a resource like a book. The recorded information is then referred to as the catalog record. Here you can see the resource on the left, the forerunner in this case. The middle view is the catalog record as it appears when I am cataloging. This is where I'm recording the information describing the book using what's called machine readable cataloging, or MARC. MARC is what enables the computer to interpret the recorded data. MARC is a standard used by many libraries, which makes it possible for different libraries to share and use each other's catalog records. So for example, it's likely I copied the forerunner catalog record from another library and massaged the data and added some additional data to fit the O'Keeffe's specific needs. You can imagine this saves libraries a lot of time and is one of the reasons why we value standardization in our cataloging. The image on the right side is the way the forerunner's catalog record appears on the user's end. The catalog is the database of catalog records. It keeps an inventory of what's in the library's collections, and it also serves as a retrieval system. So it doesn't only keep track of what we have, it makes it possible to search and find these items as well. This serves both external user purposes, like finding a book for research, and internal user purposes, like queuing up books for conservation. Some of you may be familiar with the card catalog system, pictured here on the left, and that's kind of the analog version of the more common catalog used today, which is known as the Online Public Access Catalog, or OPAC, on the right. The O'Keeffe's OPAC is probably similar in function to the one used by your public library. Again, because libraries use similar standardized cataloging practices, patrons can more easily use different library catalogs without the burden of having to learn how to use a new one each time. There are 4 basic functions of a library catalog. The first is the identifying function. This is where a user should be able to locate a resource based on known information like the title or the author. The second is the gathering function. This is where a user can locate similar resources grouped together, like finding all of the resources on a particular subject. The third is the evaluating function. This means the user is able to evaluate and select a specific resource. This is great, for example, if somebody is looking for a specific edition of a book. The fourth function is the obtaining function. This is where the user is able to obtain the information needed to locate and obtain the resource. This includes information like location details and call number. So when I'm cataloging, I'm keeping in mind these specific functions to ensure that the catalog record will meet these needs. Now let's look at a catalog record together. This is the catalog record for the forerunner. At the top of the record is where you'll find the bibliographic and descriptive information. And in the bottom section, you'll find additional notes, which I'll talk about in a moment, and the items holding information. Standard cataloging practices for the bibliographic record include recording information like author, title, and subject. It may also include additional information such as a summary about the resource or a series note. The standard information we record in the items record is the data needed to locate and obtain an item. So this would include information like the location, the collection it belongs to, and its call number. We also include here status information. So for example, if a book is checked out or available for loan, we'd see that information here. In this case, we see that this book has been queued up for conservation. So that was an overview of the standard data that we record for all of the items in the library's collections. The cataloging that we do for the books from George O'Keeffe's personal libraries is expanded to include details that we don't usually include for our general collections. With O'Keeffe's library, we're really interested in the uniqueness of each item. So when cataloging, I go through each book page by page to find anything tucked between the pages. The items that have been found inside books include letters, photographs, and notes. And when I find something that's enclosed, I remove it, mark the location in the book with an archival bookmark, and then add that item to the archive collections. This is done for preservation of both materials and easier access in the future. Conducting detailed cataloging to describe these enclosures and their original locations allows us to keep the enclosures intellectually linked to the book, even though they are physically removed. When going through the books, I'm also looking for things like inscriptions, stamps or stickers, and annotations. Recording this information in the catalog record makes it possible for researchers to find items based on relationships. Recording this information also gives us a fuller understanding of O'Keeffe's interests and her personal network. We also add data about the item's exhibition history. Liz has mentioned the Library and Archive current exhibition. This is feminist writers from O'Keeffe's personal libraries. All of the books in this exhibition received an additional note in the catalog record to record their exhibition history. This allows us to keep track of the amount of time an object has been exhibited, lets us keep the exhibition intellectually linked after it has been deinstalled, and also makes it possible for us to search for an item based on the exhibition. We also catalog the condition of the item. The specifics of how we do this are changing now that we've had the item level survey completed. Before the survey, which Liz spoke about, we added a note to document the general condition of the item. And mostly this was used as our internal handling notes. It was a way to be able to identify how much assistance we might be required if a researcher were to request the item for use. We used broad terms like good, fair, and poor. Now, thanks to the assessment, we'll be able to apply the language provided by the conservator, the terms extensive, moderate, minor, housing only, which all have clearly defined meanings. And we'll also be able to include detailed information about when the item was reviewed and by who, what actions are needed, and any specific handling notes. This will allow us to easily pull reports together around the condition of an item and easily queue up materials for conservation. It will also allow us to more clearly communicate specific handling needs and access needs both internally and to our public patrons. So where in the catalog record can you find all of this additional information? Going back now to the Forerunner catalog record, we see the bibliographic information, the holding information, and then here's this tab called Title Notes. When you look at the title notes, you'll find additional information about the item, including the notes about what is unique from O'Keeffe's books. In this case, we see here that O'Keeffe annotated the book with poems by Carl Sandburg and made notations throughout the text. We also see the exhibition note here about where and when it was exhibited. Liz talked about the differences between the Ghost Ranch Library and the Abiquiu Book Room, so I'll just provide some information around their status as it relates to cataloging. The Ghost Ranch Library is fully cataloged and available for research. The enclosures found inside the books make up the archive collection, Papers from the Ghost Ranch Library. A public finding aid to this collection is available. The collection does not reflect any original organization, but rather is organized by Library of Congress call number. The Abiquiu Book Room is currently being cataloged. The majority of the collection has been cataloged and is discoverable in the library catalog. There is also an inventory of the entire collection available online. This collection does maintain some sense of original order and is organized by book room shelf number to reflect the way O'Keeffe had it organized. So now that we've covered the museum's library cataloging practices, I'm going to change gears here and introduce you to using the library catalog and how you can find additional information about O'Keeffe's libraries. As library services specialist, it is part of my role at the museum to provide assistance to using the tools and services offered by the library. This is typically something I would do in real time, but given technology concerns, I'm going to do it today with screenshots, but I think it'll work okay. The hope is that this will give everyone the tools needed to jump in and learn about O'Keeffe's libraries from your home. So this is the library catalog landing page. On the left side, you'll find links to additional resources to learn about the library and its collections. There's a user guide to using the catalog and a recommended reading list. There are also links to the museum's collections online and the archive finding aid database below. On top of the screen, you'll find the library's reading lists. So for example, some of our reading lists, we have a list of children's books on O'Keeffe, recommended readings on O'Keeffe, and the reading list of all of the books featured in the Feminist Writings exhibition. I'm going to talk specifically about searching the catalog for O'Keeffe's books so that you can do this from your own home. And to do this, you want to go to Advanced Search, and you can do that either here right in the center or up here on the right-hand side. This is the landing page for the Advanced Search. The first thing we want to do is go down here to this Collection tab. From the Collection tab, we can select the O'Keeffe Personal Library Abiquiu Book Room and O'Keeffe Personal Library Ghost Ranch Library Collection. I'm going to search this without adding any search terms, and it's going to show us all of the titles cataloged in these two collections. Here we have nearly 3,000 results. From here, we can use the options on the left side of the screen to narrow down the selection by author or item type. And if I were using the web page, I would scroll down the screen to show you that we can also narrow by topic or subject. But let's try a more specific search. Let's say I'm someone who's interested in the cookbooks Georgia O'Keeffe had, and I'm also interested in the books that she annotated. So in addition to selecting these two collections, I'll also add two terms, cooking and annotation, and then click search. I have 51 results. So the catalog found 51 annotated cookbooks in O'Keeffe's personal libraries. Let's take a look at that first title, The Cooking of Scandinavia. Here again in the catalog record, we see up at the top the bibliographic and descriptive information, like series. This book is part of the Time Life series, Foods of the World, and it was published in 1968. Here I see the holdings information, so this tells me that these books are actually located up in Abiquiu in the book room, and that they require a request of 2 weeks in advance for us to be able to provide it for research. And then here in these title notes, we see again the unique information about this book. In this case, there's annotations by O'Keeffe. So you can imagine that searching the catalog and delving into O'Keeffe's book collection, you can learn a lot about her interests and her connections. In addition to the library catalog, there are also other ways for you to learn about O'Keeffe's personal libraries. This is the landing page to the Library and Archive Online. And here's where you can easily access the library's resources, find research guides, and request remote or in-person appointments. Again, I'm doing this with screenshots, so bear with me while I give you a tour of the site. We've built this out considerably over the last couple of years, and we're excited to show you what's now available. If you scroll down the page, you'll find here the Library and Archive newsfeed. This is where we post new happenings in the library and archive. We also have our newest feature, our chat widget. So when this is online, please chat with us. It means we're here and available to help. We have our contact information, the library catalog, the new resources and guides feature where we'll post our newest resources available. And lastly, at the bottom of the homepage is access to the library and archive exhibitions, which I'll talk about in a moment, and where we highlight new books that we've acquired for our general collections. But I want to take a step back and talk about our research guides. As I've said, we've worked hard over the last couple of years to make more resources available remotely, and research guides have been a primary focus. Research guides, or guides, help users learn about a subject or a tool. They'll provide information on a subject and direct you to where you can find more information. To access our guides, you can do so right here from the center of the page or up here in our navigation bar. This is the guides homepage. You'll notice right now we have the guides displaying by subject. So we have 7 different subjects here. We can also change it to list all of the guides or list the guides by type. But I like having it listed out by subject. And there is the subject of O'Keeffe's personal libraries. So let's check that out. If I click on the subject, it'll list research guides related to that subject. In this case, artist materials, discover the collections, and O'Keeffe's personal libraries. The little eye icons next to the title give a quick look at the description of the guide. So here we see a quick view of the O'Keeffe Personal Libraries Guide. It gives us a brief description and tells us the additional subjects related to it. We also have a link to the subject's homepage, so let's go look there. On the subject homepage, we see again a tab for guides. This includes research guides and our exhibition guides, which again I'll talk about later. There's an online resources tab. This information tells you what tools are available to use to search for the subject. In this case, the best tools to search O'Keeffe's libraries are the library catalog and the collections online. We also see that the museum's blog and the museum's vintage blog are also good places to search. And lastly, there's the news post tab. Here you can see all of the library and archive news posts related to the subject. So in this case, a lot of these will tell you specific stories about books from O'Keeffe's library. Going back to the guides tab, let's take a look at a research guide and see what kind of information you can find there. I'm going to open up the guide to Georgia O'Keeffe's Personal Libraries. I invite all of you to explore these pages at home, but I'd like to give you a tour of this guide so you know what kinds of information you can expect to find. On this About page, you get an overview of O'Keeffe's library, much of which you've heard this morning. Because as Liz and I have mentioned, there are some differences between the cataloging of the Abiquiu Book Room and the Ghost Ranch Library, so each collection has its own page. Each page provides information about that collection, how to search the collection, and images from the collection. The Learn More page offers a lot of great resources to learn about O'Keeffe's book collection through a range of sources like books. Here's the Book Room exhibition catalog, My Far Away one, where O'Keeffe and her husband Alfred Stieglitz wrote each other about the books they were reading. Below, there is The Weekends with O'Keeffe, which is a memoir written by Carol Merrill, who O'Keeffe hired to catalog her library. There are resources to find related material in the archive collections. There are presentations and blog posts, including a presentation by Carol Merrill, where you can hear her stories, and a presentation all about highlighting specific books from O'Keeffe's collection. And lastly, there are video resources. Here you can see, if you're interested in learning about O'Keeffe's books or would like to see the book room, I highly recommend you watch this Facebook Live video that we did from inside of the book room. It does have some technical glitches at the start, but I promise it doesn't last the whole video. And the last page is all about using the collection. So here's where you could find additional information about requesting access to the collections, like the amount of time needed to submit a request. All of our guides follow a similar template to this one. So you know that you've seen one. So now that you've seen one, our hope is that you can move comfortably through all of the others. And the last thing that I'll share with you is something we've recently put together and are really excited about. It's the Library and Archive Exhibitions page, which can be accessed here from the navigation bar. The Library and Archive Exhibitions page is where you can find current and past library and archive exhibitions. There are over 24 past exhibitions featuring library and archival material listed here. For a few of the exhibitions, we've built out their own pages so you can see images from the exhibition, checklists, and related content. We hope to continue building this out for past exhibitions. We do have a page for our current exhibition, Feminist Writings from Georgia O'Keeffe's Personal Libraries. So if you're unable to come to the library in Santa Fe to see the exhibition, this is a great option to view the exhibition and learn more about the content from home. And on that note, I would like to conclude by inviting everyone to be in touch with us here in the library and archive. There are many ways you can connect with the library, even if you aren't in Santa Fe. In addition to in-person research appointments, we offer virtual reference appointments where we can show you how to use our tools and help you find what you're looking for. We are available by appointment, phone, email, and chat, and we'd love to hear from you. So please be in touch, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much, Tori and Liz. We do have a couple questions in the Q&A section. So I'm going to go ahead and read them out. Does the library staff assist in research when a new exhibit is being planned?
Yes, we do. At various stages, we help the curatorial staff in their research, both exhibitions that are being organized here at the museum and exhibitions related to O'Keeffe happening elsewhere. It's one of the regular things that we are supporting, and we are currently putting together some materials and guides for upcoming exhibitions that will be changed out at the end of this year.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, Liz. How do you determine what new books to add to the collection?
We have a collection development policy that guides us in selecting materials for the collection. As I mentioned, it's largely around O'Keeffe, modernism, her contemporaries, and regional histories as they relate to O'Keeffe. We support the whole museum staff, so we also add materials related to the professional interest and activities of museum staff and volunteers and interns. In the past, we have had a pretty healthy fellowship program. So a lot of the collection has been built around the goals of that fellowship program, which is largely the study of modernism.
This next one is a little more specific, but Linda asks, thanks for all this wonderful information. Do you know if Stieglitz gifted books to O'Keeffe on specific occasions or for specific events? My impression from reading correspondence is that they didn't celebrate birthdays or anniversaries, etc.
Thanks, Linda. Yeah, I think that's my impression as well. I kind of showed you the death of, or reflections on the death of a porcupine. So there was kind of a celebration of an anniversary or moment, but my understanding is the same, that it was more the material, they were likely to gift and inscribe something that meant the book itself meant something to them. Tori, do you have anything else to add? Can you think of specific ones for those more traditional activities of birthday and gift giving?
Yeah, I can't think of any specific inscriptions that speak to those kinds of things.
Great. And our last question is from Ryan asking, do you have a collection of photos of the handwritten inscriptions in the books, either by O'Keeffe or the gift giver? I think it relates a little bit to our last question.
All of them pulled together, no. But as I had mentioned, we recently had a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and that enabled us to purchase a camera with this also beautiful ability to have photograph the books and the inscriptions safely. So really in order for us to be able to do that and send some of these out, we really needed those condition reports to understand if they could be safely handled by our photographer and what kind of handling might be required to get the inscriptions photographed. So that is now, actually, we've just begun that this year, more the systematic photography of the items. And those, as we photograph them, are going to be added to the collections online. So I kind of showed you the Forerunner was in an uncorrected, uncropped, like being staged, getting photographed at all the inscriptions in the front cover. So more of that is definitely planned. And yeah, pulling them together so that you could search and discover them all together in the collections online would be wonderful.
Thank you, Liz. I know I said that was our last one, but we got one more that came in as you were speaking. It's an interesting one from Tracy. She asked, in cataloging / processing the books in both libraries, were there any surprising finds? For example, did you ever think, why in the world would Miss O'Keefe have a book on this?
I don't think that I haven't been surprised about the books in her collection, in part because the collections are really diverse. There's a lot of different subjects that covers a lot of topics. And so if anything, I have been surprised to see the range of it, but I can't think of any specific titles. I know in the books I found surprising things, like a sketch was a very surprising find. A nail file was a surprising find, until I was reminded that, the pages were uncut, and so you needed a tool to actually cut open the pages. So I've been more surprised by four-leaf clovers than specific titles.
That's really cool. I remember the nail file fact was really, really interesting. And just to answer some other questions that we had in the chat prior, Joan asked, do you need an account to use the Library and Archive website? We said no account is required to search and discover books via the catalog, but you can create one if you want to save lists. And then I think another popular question was if we need a library card / membership to log on to the library. And a card is not required to search and discover the catalog. You can create an account to save reading lists, however. So as of now, I'm trying to look if we have any more last minute questions kind of input. If you didn't hear us answer the questions live, within the Q&A tab, there is a part that says answered. We may have just answered it within the chat and not answered them live, just to let you know. One more, in learning about Georgia, Tori and Liz, is there a book you would recommend?
Generally, just learning about Georgia O'Keeffe. I think we have on our website a few things. So there's a few biographies on there that are really great, but I do always go back to O'Keeffe's kind of autobiography that she did in the mid to late 70s. These are, her own words about her work and life. And I think that that is a really wonderful place to start if you can. The book is called Georgia O'Keeffe. It's by Viking Press. I think a lot of people are always looking for these quotes that they hear or understanding some of her paintings, and often you can find the answers in her own words in that book. But I do really want to encourage other people who were asking like more about the subjects that she was interested in, and Tori and I have done various exhibitions and presentations on this over the years, and they are all located on that website that Tori had shared. There's a guide for their personal libraries, and that links you to some past presentations that were done from the book room. You can find exhibitions that we've done on specific kind of areas, collecting areas that she had, like gardening or cooking, or just the Stieglitz group of materials that were collected. So there's a lot to explore in her collection on your own. And yeah, no accounts are required to search the catalog, or go on the website, or go on the collections online and view images. It's primarily in the books that you would find in the collections online, which have images, are from Ghost Ranch collection. And I encourage, I do see more questions coming in, and that is like what we're here for. So as Tori said, send us emails. We are happy to help everyone find the answers, and we welcome you to come visit the Library and Archive.
Definitely. I think we're in that last 5 minutes of the hour. So if you have any other pressing questions, please make sure to send them in right now. For now, there's only really one more left asking about Maria Chabot. Do we hold most of the correspondence between Georgia O'Keeffe and Marie Chabot, or is there a separate library related to this? Is this something we could perhaps find online ourselves?
Yes, actually, we do have two large archival collections related to Maria Chabot. We have the Maria Chabot archive, which is primarily photographs and correspondence between that were exchanged with Chabot and O'Keeffe. And then there is the larger Maria Chabot papers, and this is Maria Chabot's archive for the most part. So that is a huge collection that covers Chabot's all her correspondence with various individuals, various photo projects, her WPA work, all her various writing projects that she has done. And we do have her books, and her books are being cataloged. There's very few left. So you can find all of Maria Chabot's books also cataloged into the library catalog.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Liz. Anything else you guys would like to add before we log off for the day? No? Okay, great. Well, like we said before, any other pressing questions, you can reach out to Liz and Tori directly. The phone is still on the screen, and the email library@gokm.org is still there as well. Additionally, this recording will be made live within a week from now on our website. So if there's any other information you want to go back to, you can visit us under, I believe, past talks under the adults page online. So with that being said, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.